Hi everybody, welcome to special edition. Ugh, I'm nervous because you guys are right there.
Okay, I'm just gonna be zoning in.
I wish you had your headphones on.
I'm gonna try to play on my phone, but try to be a little bit louder.
Put your headphones on, baby.
It can drain some of the background sound out. Okay.
Okay. Hi everybody, it's Mo. Welcome to B is for Behavior. As you can see, I'm in a different location today. We took a family vacation to Seattle, so I'm going to be broadcasting live from Seattle today. You might see a train go by behind me. We have a pretty good view here in this room of this train, which is pretty cool. It goes by every half hour or so you might see it. We also have the Space Needle right out there, and the Pacific Science Center, which we visited today, the Pop Art Museum, which I definitely recommend to anybody coming to Seattle.
Pop culture.
The Mo
Museum of Pop Culture.
the Mo Pop Museum. You might hear some noises in the back because my family and I are sharing this space, so we might have a little bit of background chatter. So today we want to talk a little bit about data and why data is so important in behavior analysis. Data looks at things that are specific and definable, that can be observed by multiple people, and everyone sees it the same way. So we really want to think about those operational definitions of behavior. If you're not familiar with operational definitions, those are the ways that we define a behavior. So instead of saying the student tantrums, we want to say, the student lays on the ground kicking his arms and legs. We want to say that he swings at people with a closed fist. We want to define what that looks like. That way, even if somebody comes in who's never seen this child before, knows exactly what that behavior is going to look like, because a tantrum can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it also depends on what you want to track. So, maybe tapping somebody with an open hand, maybe that's their way of getting attention, not necessarily a hit. But if they're striking with a closed fist, maybe that's the kind of hit that you want to track. So you want to be really mindful about what exactly you're tracking, because I've seen data come back a lot of different ways when the operational definition isn't intact. So a good way to test your operational definitions is give all of your staff data sheets with the operational definition on it. Tell them how to use the data sheet and have them all track a behavior, maybe in a video, not necessarily of your client, but on YouTube you can find videos of martial arts, and you want them to track every time they see a punch or something like that. Or you can demonstrate too if there's a behavior that you want them to track. You can also have them share with you some of the things that they've observed as well, and maybe some of the issues that they might find with the operational definition that you've chosen. But you want to make sure that that's succinct and very clear to all of your staff. You want to, when defining your behavior, you want to talk about emotional states or things that might not be observable, because again, that just leaves room for error in interpretations. So you want to make sure that you kind of leave those things out. You can talk about those things with your staff, but those kind of fall into maybe some setting events. You might want to track those too. The student was or was not given their medication this morning. The student had between 3 to 6 hours of sleep instead of the recommended 8 hours of sleep, because those things are those are important setting events that can lead to the behavior. You can include those things on your data sheet as well. I'll put an example of a good data sheet that I really like down below for if you're tracking setting events, antecedents and behaviors, consequences, if you're tracking all of those things. Also environmental factors. Sometimes you want to list specific environmental factors because maybe the behavior is varying between the classroom and the playground and the hallway, because there's some really specific things that could be happening different in those environments that you want to be tracking. So make sure that you are keeping all of those things pretty specific and you have a pretty good idea of what you're looking for. It helps if you you are witnessing it firsthand. Reports are helpful. It's helpful to get your staff's information and kind of what they're seeing, have them take some initial baseline data, but really you want to be the one to take the behavior data, because that's going to give you the most informed operational definition when it's being reported to you by staff members. Sometimes they're not always seeing things the same way that you are. It's really good to have maybe staff who you're supervising. They can do it for you. But some of your direct line staff, they might need a little bit more kind of fine tuning with those things. So it's really best if you kind of start there. So there's many different types of data collection, and just to give you kind of a brief overview, there's time sampling, there's frequency data, there's interval data, there's also anecdotal data that you can take. So we'll just look today at some anecdotal data, some frequency data, and some time sampling. So for time sampling, there's partial, whole, and momentary time sampling. You want to remember with whole interval and partial interval that the whole interval behavior data is going to underestimate the behavior, because filling up the entire interval with something is going to be less likely to happen than filling up part of an interval. So the partial interval time data is going to overestimate the behavior. So keep that in mind. If you want a behavior occurring, usually the whole interval time sampling method is best, because you want that behavior to happen for a certain period of time. So for example, maybe you are working with a student on completing a task. So we want them to do math for 5 minutes. Then maybe we'll do a whole interval time sampling starting at every 30 seconds. So we want to watch them for 30 seconds, make sure they're engaged for the entire 30 seconds. At the end of that interval, it'll be a plus. And you do that again every 30 seconds. And then maybe you increase that time sampling to a minute, and then maybe every minute 30 seconds or something like that. And then maybe eventually for the whole 5 minutes, you can just do a plus or minus. But you want to start kind of small and get a good idea of how long they're able to do it. For the partial interval, that's a good one if you're trying to track maybe stereotypy, if you're trying to get a good picture of how often that's happening. Momentary time is one that I use a lot in the school setting, because it's really an efficient way to take data. Staff can be doing something else and they just look at that designated time and they see if the behavior is occurring or not. So this might be a good one if you're looking at maybe peer engagement during play. So your students interacting, and every 15 to 30 seconds you're looking over at your student to see if they're engaging in play at that time. So you glance at them, yes or no, are they doing it or not at that designated time frame, not for the entire interval, but just at that time. So you circle yes or no. So those are the three main types of time sampling data that you're going to be collecting. Also frequency count. So maybe during, throughout your session, you want to just tally how many times a behavior is occurring. So maybe you want to, tally how many times a student breaks a pencil. So you'll just keep a tally of how often that's happening. That's frequency or count data. You can turn that into rate. So if you have a time frame, maybe you're, looking at an entire school day, maybe you're looking at a session time of a couple hours. You can just tally how often something like that's happening, and then at the end of your time frame, your 2 hours maybe happened 6 times during a 2-hour period, so you can say it has a rate of 3 times an hour. So that's another good way to take data. Lastly, you have anecdotal data. So this is it's a pretty good way to collect baseline if you're having multiple different observers. Just have them write down everything. So maybe with a basic ABC data chart where you have empty spaces for your antecedent, behavior, and your consequence. Just have them write down everything that they observed. You can give them some guidelines around that. So you can say give them a definition of antecedent. Antecedents are anything that happened right before the behavior. Maybe you're presenting a task demand, maybe you're removing attention, maybe you're denying access to something. So you want to give them some information about what to write in there. Then for behavior, again, asking them to keep it very observable, measurable, writing in there what they observed the client doing. And then consequence, so what happened as a result of the behavior, what happened in the environment immediately after that behavior. Maybe they started, screaming and throwing things, and so you gave them what was taken away originally. Hopefully not, but because we know that would maintain the behavior. So, but that's helpful information to know. Like maybe if the behavior is only happening with the staff member, you see that the staff member is reinforcing the whole behavior chain, then that's kind of an indicator of what's happening. So again, data is helpful for that reason too. So yeah, those are just the main types of behavior data that you're going to be collecting. So hopefully this is helpful. Just some cliff notes on that. If you have specific questions related to any types of data collection, or specific situations which you might want to use that type of data, just thinking about the environment that you're in, home versus school is going to be very different in the type of data that you're collecting. There's tons of different types of data sheets you can use. You can create your own as well. I'll put some examples down below of different data sheets you can use in school versus home versus community settings. And if you have any other thoughts, just leave some comments down below. Thanks. See you later. Bye. Okay. Ta-ta. Ta-ta for now. The train went by.
It did.
Yeah.
Success.
Successful.
Seattle.